Big Pharma and the medical establishment is guilty of murdering millions of people, and today we will discuss how the US government injected healthy people with plutonium. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Let's get into this right here out of the Journal of Patient Safety, a prestigious journal, and they initially thought that the errors that occur in the medical establishments here were 100,000 Americans per year, but they in fact realized that it was much higher. Using the global trigger tool, they realized how bad the situation truly is, as if 100,000 wasn't bad enough, but this is it. The true number of premature deaths associated with preventable harm to patients was estimated at more than 400,000 per year. This is an extreme number to think about, that if we extrapolate and extend beyond the US and go into the whole world, we're talking about millions of people dying every single year from issues that could have been prevented. This is extreme when you think about it, and how sad it is because we put our lives in these establishments' hands. It is quite sad to see this. So let's connect in with this right here, that this would make medical errors the third leading cause of death in America, behind heart disease, which is the first, and cancer, which is the second. This is out of the Scientific American. You can read on for yourself here, but just wanted to acknowledge the fact that they say that this is the third leading cause of death. Medical errors, not even including the prescription medications and the complications that those arise from. This is really looking at it in a different light. So let's move on here with the global trigger tool. Just wanted to show you that even the National Institute of Health is talking about it, and they are saying this, that they miss 90% of the adverse events typically, and that's why when you include those, we're looking at numbers that are significantly higher than we ever imagined before. Missing 90% of the adverse events, as virtually all of them. So of course, many things go unreported, and that's how they're able to bring their numbers down. Just like the inflation rates, just like the unemployment rates, they're always skewed. So we'll move on to the big news of the day. It is very hard to discuss this. I would just go and cover this briefly. This is out of the New York Times, but this has been written in books. This has been documented everywhere. Radiation tests used some healthy people, and they whitewash it, which is quite sad here. But they were talking about this in the Manhattan Project. If you don't know the Manhattan Project, you need to research that. But basically, to build the atomic bomb, at least 31 patients were given radioactive plutonium, uranium, and so on. They were actually injected with this, and then in order to test them, they were ripping their teeth right out of their mouth, and they were using that to test. I mean, this is incredible to read the things that they were doing to these people that were, number one, healthy, and number two, not aware. They were not informed that these experiments were being conducted on them. And this is how extreme they are willing to go to test in this instance here. But we looked at the Tuskegee experiments that took place not that long ago, when you think about it, and there are so many different experiments done by the medical establishment, done by Big Pharma. They were giving out, in certain instances, I just talked about it not too long ago, how they were actually allowing the medication to be given out that had contamination of HIV in it, still selling it for a lengthy period of time after knowing that it was contaminated. This is what they're allowed to do, and I'll discuss how they get away with that in a moment here. I just wanted to show this here. Agent Orange is a chemical weapon developed during the Vietnam War, which killed or maimed nearly 1 million people. Now, this is out of my free ebook. In the description of all of my videos, I gave away my 3 free ebooks, and you can read. It's about different information that I get to in the Money GPS, so I like to include them as free data. But they said this: Dow has created a GM corn variety that can contains one of the principal ingredients of Agent Orange, 2,4-D, a carcinogen. This is the most widely used herbicide in the world. Believe it or not, what they were killing and maiming people with during the Vietnam War is now the most widely used herbicide in the world. That is put on the crops that you and I eat, that is fed to the animals, that is given basically all around the world, poisoning people, and this is allowed to go on. Let's get into more of the detail here. When we look into toxic waste dumping, let's just look at one example here, and you can see Westinghouse agreed to the largest hazardous waste settlement in the history of the EPA, $75 million, and this was years ago. But you're looking at that, this is your slap on the wrist compared to the damage that they have done. These companies are allowed to do as much damage as they want. We look at nuclear power plants dumping their radioactive waste into the drinking water supplies, for example, in Lake Ontario. And then you look at what happened with Fukushima. Speaking of Fukushima, let's get into this right here out of the Enviro Reporter. U.S. radiation surges higher. This is brand new information, 2014 beta graphs of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency show a sharp increase in air radiation levels across the country. And that's going to show you that things aren't slowing down at Fukushima. Things are getting better. That is coming across the ocean right and spreading all across there. We saw what happened in Alaska and on the west coast in California, Vancouver. All sorts of people have been documenting this, and we've been seeing it. So moving on into more information about this, basically what they get into is the failure of this taxpayer-funded program to maintain anything near a success rate approaching acceptable is extraordinary. I totally agree with this. None of the protections are put in place when we really need it. We see the triple meltdowns at Fukushima, and we will unfortunately be the recipients of this damage as it continues to get worse. This is what I wanted to get into. You might have to click on the description below to get this, to actually be able to visibly see the writing. But I'll just cover it very briefly here, showing you the collusion between the government and Monsanto and the pharmaceutical giants. So let's just cover a few right here. We're looking at people who have been congressmen, senators, senior staff, secretary of commerce, and so on, become things like the consultants, part of the lab supervisors, board members, the vice presidents, and so on, interchanging their positions. And this is the revolving door. And if you look lower at the pharmaceutical industry, big pharma, let's look at this here. You got the National Security Council, you have U.S. senators, representatives, looking at the commissioners, and then they go on in the pharmaceutical industry to work for Pfizer, to be VPs of corporations, CEOs of other corporations, directors, and so on and so forth. This is the revolving door. This is the collusion between these mega corporations and government, and this is only getting worse. We see how it directly relates to what we are seeing in the real world, as we see them allowing to be dumping toxic waste, allowing them to create these medical errors that go far and wide beyond anything that should be allowed. This is doing much harm to the public. It is very sad. I hope that you'll look into this further. I'd like to cover this when I can. This information is vital, so we can't just look into the financial side. We need to discuss further into the collusion in the other avenues as well. If you found this video informative, please give me a thumbs up, and don't forget to become an insider. The Insiders is where I give out all my best intel for free. That is available at themoneygps.com. Scroll down to the bottom, fill in your email address, and you get occasional emails from me with good, short, concise info.